there, Danielle Matthews here. I'm coming to you live from Florida. Today is Monday, so it is book club day, and we are in the midst of reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. If you have not joined book club yet, these conversations are standalone, so it is absolutely fine to just tune in, to just hear what this conversation is about today. This is about finding who you truly are, and this book has gotten, I would say, better and better and deeper as we have read it. If you are joining me live, please make sure you let me know when you get here. If you're catching the replay, let me know that you're catching the replay. But we are going to dive into this book right now. So what really struck me before we kind of dive into the contents of this chapter was one particular line at the very start. So we're starting on page 208. It's the third part of chapter 3, The Dreamer in the Dream. He says, "Non-resistance is the key to the greatest power in the universe. Through it, consciousness or spirit is freed from its imprisonment in form." And I don't know about you, and I am not sure why this hit me so hard. It was like it hit me right between the eyes. Hey, Charlotte, good to see you. The idea that spirit is imprisoned within us, like, just shook me. You know, we always say, we kind of view it from like, I'm, spirit having a human experience, right? And we look at it from that way. At least for myself, I've always thought, like, that must be fun to come and explore this world of form and just observe everything through this, through this being. And is my internet having trouble? You with me? It's okay now? Okay, I turned off Instagram, so sorry for those that are paying attention over there. It will be posted up to YouTube later. But anyway, so I don't know about you guys, but I've always sort of viewed that as like, it must be so much fun for spirit to come through this vessel and be able to experience the world. And that sentence, like, just got me in this totally different perspective of like, whoa, what if spirit feels imprisoned by being in this world of form? And it wants to be freed from its imprisonment. And that is the whole goal, is to free itself from the ego, from this human experience. I don't know about you, but it got me thinking like, whoa, like I've always viewed it as the person finding spirit. I've never viewed it as the perspective of spirit, wanting to be freed from this being trapped in this like person, this identity. Anyway, not so relevant to the whole conversation of this chapter, but I thought it was a very interesting point. This was on page 208, right under The Dreamer and the Dream. It like wasn't even the point of this section, but it just like hit me like right in between the eyes. "Non-resistance is the key to the greatest power in the universe. Through it, consciousness or spirit is freed from its imprisonment in form." And this is what he gets into. Form is meant to be, spirit is meant to come here and just play. But we, through the mind and through the ego, get into this whole mess of making everything miserable, thinking that this should have happened or that should have happened, or I didn't like that, or I would prefer it to be this way. And we resist what is present. And so the whole point of this was to explain that non-resistance, when you are completely open, allowing, and accepting of what is here, that is when spirit can actually be freed, so everything becomes playful and joyful, versus how most of us experience life, which is like a challenge, an obstacle, a means to an end, always trying to get somewhere but never quite arriving, being frustrated, being overwhelmed, being judgmental, all of these things. When what he's saying is it doesn't need to be that way. And he says non-resistance is the key. It's the key that frees spirit and aligns you to the greatest power in the universe. And so my question to you guys is like, well, what is the greatest power? Right? What is the greatest power in the universe that he is saying we get to become aligned with? The greatest power is infinite intelligence. It's source. It's the divine. It's God. It's the ocean. It is everything, right? Whatever you want to call it. He says that is the spirit of also what animates you. It is you come from source, you are it. And resistance makes the world appear real. It strengthens the ego. So when we resist what is present, when the mind says, well, it should have been this way, you could have done that, this person could have been elected, we should have made this decision, right? When we are in resistance to now, you strengthen the ego, you strengthen the thought forms, you strengthen the illusion, you strengthen the contents of the container, and you forget more and more and more that you are the actual container. You're paying more and more and more attention to the weather. Oh, it should be, snowing. Why is it raining? Blah, 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 blah. When really the fact is you're the sky, and everything is impermanent. Everything, as he says, is ephemeral. It comes and it goes, right? Everything has an ephemeral nature. He says things, bodies and egos, events, situations, thoughts, emotions, desires, ambitions, fears, drama. They come, pretend to be all important, and before you know it, they are gone, dissolved into the no-thingness out of which they came. And this is what he's getting at with the dreamer and the dream. So form is meant to be this play for spirit to experience, right? It plays through us because it needs eyes to see, it needs a nose to smell, it needs a mouth to taste. It needs the human form. Spirit does in order to experience the world of form. But it is not form. It's the formless. It's the thing that created form, right? And so it forgets that though, and it becomes so identified with the world of form, it creates misery. It creates the struggle that is our day in, day out, right? The world, though, is ephemeral. And the dream and the dreamer, understand this, the dream is what all of you and I call life. The dream is this land of form. It is short-lived. It's a play of form. The dreamer is the formless. It's consciousness. It is who you truly are. Even this body, this vehicle called Danielle, isn't real. I'm not the dreamer. I'm part of the dream. It's a trippy thing when you start to understand what this is really getting at. The dreamer is not the person. The person is part of the dream. Think about your past. Does it not feel like a dream? That vacation you took, that experience you had when you were 5 years old, right? It feels like a dream because it's past. The dreamer, though, consciousness is always here. It's like you are the pot, not the contents of the pot. You are the sky, not the weather. You are the dreamer, not the dream. You're the witness to this life's experience. You're not this life's experience. You're the one that looks in the mirror and goes, how did I get so old? I feel the same. Where these wrinkles come from, I feel the same. Why didn't this body move like it used to move? I feel the same. Because consciousness, the witness, has not aged. It has not changed. It's fully present in every moment, just as when you were little as you are now. But the body, this form, we look at it and we see it, and so we think that's us. It's not us. We're the thing looking at it. Does this make sense? This is deep, okay? This is really like, if you've taken Inner Management Mastery with me, this is lesson 1. Teaching you, helping you understand you are the witness. And what he's getting at is you are the dreamer. It's the same teaching, right? You're not the dream. You're not the contents. You're not the weather patterns. You are the sky. And I thought it was really interesting what he meant by the title of this book, A New Earth. He talks about in this chapter. It's on page 210, so I need to flip there. But on page 210, he says, to awaken within the dream is our purpose now. Understand what that means. To awaken within the dream. So we're in a dream state right now, this world of form. To awaken, to realize you are consciousness, to be the witness in this world of form, that is your purpose. For consciousness to experience itself, for the wave to realize it's part of the ocean. It's not just an individual wave. That's the purpose. And he says, when we are awake within the dream, the ego-created earth drama comes to an end. All the dramas and struggles of this lifetime come to an end. And more benign and wondrous dream arises. This is the new earth. The new earth is living where we are conscious beings, consciously aware that we are the creators, that we came here to experience, that every moment is beautiful and joyful, not because it's a means to an end to get our ego mind something, but because we are a beautiful expression in and of every moment. And that is what life is about, and to just have complete joy in experiencing what chocolate tastes like, and what crystals look like, and what jumping in the ocean feels like. right? That's what we're here. And whatever we do, when we can tap away from the ego and into that, something beautiful comes out, which is what he gets into in the rest of the chapter. So going beyond limitation, all right? He says, form is limitation, all right? Right? We talked about spirit, as I like what hit me between the eyes. Spirit is imprisoned in form, okay? It is stuck in this being for this lifetime of Danielle. Spirit is currently trapped inside, right? Form has limitations. Form is limitation. We are here to experience, though, and overcome the limitations. And this is where so many people have learned, right? The journey from PTSD to PTG, from post-traumatic stress disorder to post-traumatic growth. It's realizing, oh, in the limitations, in the obstacles, I learn more. I become more. Some limitations you must come through internally. So for example, my head trauma, my brain injury, it was like a year into my injury that I realized, like, I'm miserable. Like, I don't want to be on this planet. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm having panic attacks. I feel like hell physically. I don't want to be here. And then I went, but I'm not willing to leave. So how can I live with this? What can I internally do to overcome this limitation of the brain trauma? And it was full acceptance of it. That's what I had to do. I had to fully accept, right? What did he say at the beginning? It is non-resistance that is the key that unlocks the door to everything. And that's what happened with me. Once I just fully accepted, okay, the accident's here. This is my life. What can I do right now in this moment? I'm not going to think about the future. I'll get anxious. I'm not going to think about the past. I'll get depressed. What can I do in this moment right here, right now that will bring me joy? And for me, it turned out to be just doing things for the people around me that made them happy. It brought me happiness. And I went, that's how I'm going to live life. All right. And all of a sudden, my inner world just opened up. It's like I accessed this deeper knowing. And I couldn't articulate it in the way that I'm articulating it now then. I was experiencing it though. And this is exactly what he's talking about. Some limitations must be overcome internally. That was the internal overcoming that I did. And whatever situation is in front of you, likely it's an internal overcoming. Accepting the very thing that you feel like you can't accept is the thing you need to do that will open this up to you. All right? What he says, and I thought this was beautiful, he says, uncompromising surrender opens the vertical dimension. You guys have heard me, we've talked about the cross, right? The mystical meaning of the cross, the horizontal being time, the vertical being your true essence, you. And that center point, the now moment, is when you can get it. He's saying when you surrender fully to what's here, you access the vertical, that vertical dimension, the depth. And what he says is access to this takes you to beyond what this world of form is showing you. It takes you to this consciousness that is truly you. And he says through this, something comes out of value, of immense truth, that if you had never accessed this vertical, would have remained unmanifest. All right, I want to read this because it was so freaking good. So where was it? I think we're on like page 211. Yeah. So those limitations either keep you trapped in egoic reaction, which means intense unhappiness, or you rise above them internally by uncompromising surrender to what is. That is what they are here to teach you. The surrender state of consciousness opens up the vertical dimension in your life, the dimension of depth. Something will then come forth from that dimension into this world, something of infinite value that otherwise would have remained unmanifested. All right, and then he goes on to talk about Stephen Hawking, right? This man who has, neuron disease, progressive motor neuron disease, which basically made him paralyzed. Every part of his body just slowly became paralyzed. And Eckhart Tolle said, I saw in his eyes, this man was completely surrendered to what was. He wasn't fighting the disease inside of him. And because of that, he had joy in his eyes. He had life in his eyes. He was living in surrender. He had mastered the inner dimension. He had created the vertical. And so he had created this depth. And he said in an interview, right, who could have ever wished for more? He knew it. Beautiful spiritual being, right? Because he had access to this. All right. Any questions with that? Like, that's big. It's a big concept. But that's everything. So like whatever the current limitation is in your life, whatever the current frustration, whatever the obstacle that feels immovable, it is your surrender to it that is going to open it up. Surrendering doesn't mean giving up. It means accepting this is here and I'm going to be okay with the fact that this is here. But your ego is going to have a hard time with that. It's going to have a very hard time, right? Because my ego, in my example, my ego was like, well, I don't want to live like this. And I know what it's like to not be injured. And I know what it's like to have a fully functioning brain and body and to not be in pain every day. And like, I don't want to live this way. But I finally just said, well, but you are. So stop resisting and just live with it. And just decide internally to be happy and to accept it. And it was like, poof, that's internal transmutation. It opened up a depth that I didn't even realize because I had been living in the world of form. And all of a sudden, I accessed this. It's the same that Stephen Hawking accessed. And that all of you have access to. I'm telling you. But it's like surrendering the ego, which is the hardest thing. Very hard to do. But that's everything. So the joy of being was the next section. And he talks about how joy cannot ever come to you, right? Because joy is something that emanates from within you. It's the thing that was emanating through Stephen Hawking's eyes. You find it through accepting the present moment. Only then can joy come to you. But most of us are stuck in this world of form. Even the most affluent people. It's so funny because our culture tells us, get the better house, have the better car, have more money, go on better vacations, have more things, right? And then you've made it. Well, guess what? If you talk to these affluent people, most of them have not figured out that that didn't actually get them happiness. Or they're running. I need this thing, now I need that thing, now I need that thing. And they're never getting there because the answer's not out there. And the more affluentness you have, right, around you, the more you're stuck in the world of form, surrounded by cars and things and people that are shallow, that are all about the form, which what you're looking for is in the formless, right? It's like you're putting more and more contents into the pot saying, I'm trying to get filled up, I'm trying to feel better, and you just keep putting shit in there. And guess what? Like, actually, when the pot has more contents in it, you lose sight of the actual pot, the container, who you are. And when you start to get the contents out, that's when you actually access the container. It's not saying you shouldn't have contents. It's not saying you shouldn't be rich and have abundance. No, it's just saying that the stuff in the pot is not real. No attachment to it. It doesn't matter. Okay, and if you think it does, you're never going to access it. Remember, you're the container. That's what it's getting at. People are dependent on form for happiness, and that's the problem. Okay, page 214. The joy of being, which is the only true happiness, cannot come to you through any form, possession, achievement, person, or event. Through anything that happens. That joy cannot come to you ever. It emanates from the formless dimension within you, from consciousness itself, and thus is one with who you are. It will never come from the contents in the pot. It emanates from the pot itself. And the more contents, the more you miss the container, right? Hello. It's kind of crazy, but this is life. This is the nuttiness of how we're all living, all right? So he gets into allowing the diminishment of the ego, which is what I wanted to kind of talk about today because I think this is applicable, right? A lot of this is like kind of esoteric. It's teachings, like you either get it or you don't. But when you have stuff that you can actually apply to your life, it makes a big, big difference. Okay, so put a 1 in the chat if you're willing to accept the exercise for this week before you even know what it is. Your mind's saying, wait, but what is it? I don't know. If you're willing to, let me hear it. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever been yelled at while driving? Or honked at? Somebody got angry with you while you're driving the car? Yeah, it's happened to a lot of us. Thank you. So Jennifer's in. She's like, I'm doing whatever you're saying I'm doing, right? So if you've ever been yelled at while driving, what is the reaction? For most of us, the reaction is an automatic ego reaction of yelling back or beeping back or, flipping them the bird or whatever it might be, right? Your ego gets drawn in. It's an automatic, what he calls ego repair. That's what he calls it. Okay, he calls it the ego wanting to repair itself. And it's like this automatic response that comes, all right? Because it wants self-preservation. If the ego will fight to preserve itself, even if it's wrong, it will fight. Okay? And so he says, and this is the challenge to all of us, your spiritual practice is to allow it, to let your ego be diminished, to let somebody say a falsehood about you, to let someone state an opinion that you know is wrong, but let it happen, to let somebody honk at you and you to not engage in any way about it. Don't try to resist it. Okay? On page 215, this is what he says. A powerful spiritual practice is consciously to allow the diminishment of your ego when it happens without attempting to restore it. It's going to be the hardest thing, okay? For example, when someone criticizes you, blames you, or calls you names, instead of immediately retaliating or defending yourself, do nothing. Remember the story of, what was it, was it a monk? I forget. But the story that he shared about, like, he was blamed for getting this teenage girl pregnant, and then the baby is thrust upon him, and then a year later, it turns out the girl was lying, and the baby's taken from him. He never did anything. Moment to moment, he did nothing. Is that so? Is that so? Is that so? Right? Fully accepted what was there. That's the practice. Is to just fully allow whatever is, even, actually, especially when whatever the comment, situation, the blame makes you look bad. It diminishes you. That's when you're going to want to fight back the most. But what he says is, when you are seemingly diminished in some way and remain in absolute non-reaction, not just externally, it's not like, oh, well, that was ridiculous, I'm not going to get involved, but internally, are you also calm? Internally, are you non-reactive? Like, on a visceral level, is your nervous system not engaged? Are you just calm? Like, oh, this is here. Oh, now it's gone. All right? It's a difference. So he says, when you're not just externally, but also internally, you realize that nothing real has been diminished. That through becoming less, you actually become more. What happens is you realize that little ego that wanted to react, when you don't allow it to, you realize how small that thing is, how insignificant, how unreal it is, how the truth is you're fine no matter what. You're the sky. It doesn't matter if someone's yelling at you because it's thundering right now. The thunder's going to move through. It's not you. He says, when you no longer defend or attempt to strengthen the form of yourself, the ego, you step out of identification with form, with your mental self-image. Through becoming less, in the ego's perception, right? You're not engaging with it. It's becoming diminished. You're becoming less. You, in fact, undergo an expansion and make room for being to come forward, for the witness to come forward. True power, who you are beyond form, can then shine through the apparently weakened form. Whoa! Whoa! So that's what he says Jesus meant when he said, deny yourself or turn the other cheek. It means to say, don't allow the ego part of me to get involved with this. If I don't allow that, if I turn the other cheek and I stay calm, I will access. It's like the cross example, right? Don't get pulled into the horizontal. Allow yourself to stay completely calm in the present moment, and poof, it opens you to the vertical dimension, to that depth, to the witness, to the consciousness that you are, to your beingness that can never be diminished by anything that anybody says or does. And you'll realize the ridiculousness of being upset by something that somebody said or did. It doesn't actually impact the truth of who you are. This ego mind, yeah, it gets impacted, it gets insulted, but it gets insulted about everything. And so when you stop paying attention to it, you liberate yourself from it. So, who's ready to practice? All right, who is ready to practice? It's not easy. Yes, Charlotte, it's not easy, but it gets easier. Lynn says that is the practice. It is. That is the practice. He says also try doing it. Refrain from giving your opinion. When everybody around you is giving opinions and making themselves heard and blah, 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 just don't engage. Your ego is going to want to say something, especially if they're wrong. Just don't. See what happens. Did anything that is truly you actually get diminished? No. And you can't know this until you do it. This is direct experience of what we're talking about here, okay? If you're content with being nobody in particular, content not to stand out, you align yourself with the power of the universe. This spiritual truth is diametrically opposed to the values of our contemporary culture and the way it conditions people to behave. What looks like weakness to the ego is in fact the only true strength. Freaking wild, right? It is like doing the one thing that you feel like there's no way in hell I could do, because then I release who I am, right? For me, it was like, how could I let go of the person I was before my accident, all my accomplishments, my ability to perform in life? How could I just let go of all of that? That was who I was. But it was in letting go of that and going, I'm just going to release that person ever existed, and I'm not going to worry about the person that's coming tomorrow. I'm just going to be right here and right now, because all I've got is right here and right now. It's the only thing I can depend on. It's the only thing that I have any sort of like ability to do anything with. It was through releasing all of that all of a sudden the trap door opened, and I found myself in that spiritual depth, in that place of like immense peace, where it was like, none of this matters. Like, I'm fine. I'm internally fine. Guys, if you haven't experienced this, I'm telling you, the world is tricking us into thinking that the answers are out there. It's in a certain rank. It's in a certain income. It's in a certain house. It's in a certain lifestyle. It's in this, that, and the other thing. No, it's not. It's in letting go of your ego and in accessing your full, true self. And when you have access to that, guess what? When you're in the present moment and you access that vertical dimension, your intuition comes out. Right action, right words, everything comes through you. Everything does. When you hold presence speaks through you. Spirit is freed, right? It's no longer imprisoned by you. It's like, woo, we're living life, and now I know what to do. It's been so limited by what the ego thinks I should do, couldn't do, whatever, gotta do to get love, blah, blah, blah. Now, when you drop all that stuff, it's living, it can fully express, and amazing things can come out. Like just amazing things. Who's doing it? High five me, put a 5 in the chat if you are going to do that this week, and then just making it happen for all the time. Because I want to live in the new earth. I want to live on an earth where everyone is living in this way. All right, I was not looking at the time. We need to speed through the rest of this. So, yeah, I mean, that's the main point of the day, isn't it? What else did I think was worthy of talking about? As without, so within. Okay, Tina's doing it, Jennifer's doing it, Lynn's doing it. Nice. This is interesting. Have you ever looked at the sky at night? My mom, so Lynn, she lives in Sedona, and my parents do, and it's a dark sky city. So you go out at night and you just see stars. So has anyone ever left urban areas, gone into the wilderness, been somewhere where there's no light pollution, looked up and seen, like you can see the Milky Way, like you can see everything? There's a video, I just saw it last night, it was funny. I was on X, and there was a video of like the Mars like rover, and it wasn't looking at the ground on Mars, it was looking up at the night sky, and it did a complete 360 of the night sky from Mars. And I was just completely and utterly speechless, like watching it. I mean, there was no one to talk to because I was by myself, but it was like this moment of an awe inside of me that was like, wow, like, look at that. Like, what's out there? Where are we? Where did it come from? What's happening? Like, there's no words for it. And it was so funny because the last part of this chapter, that's what he's getting at. He's saying, if you have ever experienced a sense of awe when looking into space, perhaps even felt a deep reverence in the face of this incomprehensible mystery, because it is a mystery, it means you must have relinquished for a moment your desire to explain and label and have become aware not only of the objects in space, but of the infinite depth of space itself. So many of us look up at the night sky and we say, oh, look at the stars. Oh, there's Orion's belt. Oh, there's this thing. Oh, there's that thing. we're looking at the objects. But really, the night sky, the space behind it, is what allows those stars to even be seen. And when you think about the vastness that's there, the number of light years, like you could be looking at stars that are already burned out. They're not currently in the present moment because they're taking light years to get to us. Like, what? All right. He says, you must have become still enough inside to notice the vastness in which these countless worlds exist. The feeling of awe is not derived from the fact that there are billions of worlds out there, but the depth that contains them all. You are experiencing, what he says is, through you, the universe is becoming aware of itself. In those moments, this is when consciousness, the ocean, comes into expression as a wave to forget itself in the world of form, to then all of a sudden, through traveling and trying to find the answers out there, realizing they're not out there, they're internal, then opens this access to this vertical where it can meet the depth of the ocean and realize the truth of who it is and experience itself through the wave. That was a lot. But that's what it's getting at, right? Through you, the universe is becoming aware of itself. It's amazing. Think about this. When you contemplate the unfathomable depth of space or listen to the silence in the early hours just before sunrise, like 4 a.m. is probably one of my favorite times of day. Something within you resonates with it as if in recognition. You then sense the vast depth of space as your own depth, because it's who you are. And you know that precious stillness that has no form to be more deeply who you are than any of the things that make up the content of your life. You experience the stillness as the truth of who you are. And it's why it resets all of us. It's why we all love it. All right. Well, we're going to have to end because I'm already past time. I'm just going to read this last thing. The collective disease of humanity is that people are so engrossed in what happens, so hypnotized by the world of fluctuating forms, so absorbed in the content of their lives, they have forgotten the essence. They're so distracted by all the junk in their container, they've forgotten they're the container, right? They have forgotten the essence, that which is beyond the content, beyond form, beyond thought. They are so consumed by time that they have forgotten eternity. How interesting. So consumed by time, you've forgotten eternity, which is their origin, their home, their destiny. Eternity is the living reality of who you are. Finding who you truly are. That was the name of this chapter, perfectly named. The next chapter is the discovery of inner space, and we're going to read up to page 233. Recognizing inner space is where we'll stop. All right, so next week, 223 to page 233, the discovery of inner space. Fantastic. Absolutely love this, guys. Share this with someone that needs to hear this. Tag somebody that would enjoy this message. Let's expand book club. Share this to your page so that your friends can see it, and let's create the new earth, right? That's what this is all about. All right, lots of love. I will see you next time. And remember, this week, let your ego be diminished. Don't respond. Let it happen. Let a falsehood be said about you. Let it go by and see the truth of how who you truly are isn't diminished at all. Like at all. All right? All right, I'll see ya.